Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I will be doing a season ranking of one of my favorite reality shows ever, and that is The Genius, which is a Korean reality TV show. And I've already made a video about this show in the past, where I talked about the basics of the show and why people who are fans of like Survivor and Big Brother should watch it. I'll leave a link to that video in the description. But this will be a spoiler-filled video where I talk about every season of the show in pretty decent detail. So I beg of you, if you did not watch every season of The Genius, do not watch this video. I really do think The Genius is one of the best shows I've ever watched. And if it did last more than 4 seasons and stayed relatively consistent, I think this is hands down my favorite reality show of all time. I mean, the 4-season run that it has are 4 of my favorite seasons of reality television ever. So while I will be ranking these seasons, I do love them all. So even the worst season here is still a fantastic season of television. And this is probably the most fluctuant list I've made on this channel so far, where literally every season I will be talking about has been number 1 at one point in time. And every season here has also been number 4 at one point in time. So these rankings are all over the place. To be honest, they don't even really matter. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I just wanted a reason to talk about these. So with that out of the way, let's just get started. So as I mentioned, there are 4 seasons of The Genius. So we are starting off with number 4, which for me is The Genius Rules of the Game, also known as Season 1, which, as I mentioned, I still love this season. I mean, despite it being here at the bottom, it's a really iconic season of television for me. The season starts off with a bang. I mean, the premiere itself, where at the end of the episode, we have one of the best moments in the show's history with the Garnet heist from Sangmin. It really just shows you how this show operates. The main matches are really strong in this season. I mean, they are simple, but I feel like they're simple enough for you to follow, but still leave room for the players to maneuver and make the results interesting. Now, I think there's one major exception to this, and that is Abundance and Famine, which was episode 3's main match, and it's a game that pretty much was figured out quickly and allowed the Majority Alliance to just control the entire round, leading this to be one of the worst episodes in the show's history. Actually, to be honest, it might be the worst episode in the show's history. But after that, it's pretty consistently good. I mean, the zombie game is really fun. Scamming horse race is fun. Open Pass leads to Jinho's really iconic moment. Kong's Dilemma is probably one of my favorite main matches ever. But something I do knock this season down a notch for is its death matches. I do think they are pretty dull. I mean, I think Tactical Yunori is one of the most boring things to watch on TV. The image game is, like, I just don't even get what they were thinking of that game. The Winning Streak and Indian Poker were fine, but they were used so often I did eventually find it pretty boring. And Winning Streak on its own is essentially just voting out someone. So, I mean, that wasn't particularly interesting for a game like The Genius. The cast, though, is pretty strong, as it is with every season of The Genius. I think everyone here brings something to the table, whether character-wise or gameplay-wise. The Final 4 here is probably the strongest newbie Final 4 in the history of reality television. I mean, each of them are really iconic characters. I mean, Jinho, Kyungran, Sangmin, and Sungyu are all fantastic TV. Sangmin in particular, who I think is the greatest character/player in the history of reality television. Like, the person who mixes character moments with gameplay all in one. I think that's Sangmin. And he's a major factor in why I think The Genius is as great as it is. But again, what keeps this season below the other 3 for me is that one genuinely mediocre episode and so many boring death matches that keeps it here at number 4 for me. At number 3, I have the season that most people agree is the worst season of the show. And I do enjoy it more than most people, but it's still pretty low here, obviously, and that is The Genius Rule Breakers, also known as Season 2. Which, for the longest time, I actually had this ranked as my favorite season of the bunch. And it wasn't until my latest rewatch that I actually moved it all the way to the bottom. But now I've kind of settled it here at number 3. And the main reason for that is because this season, for me, has some of the highest highs in the entire series, but also has some of the lowest lows. This season has a fantastic premiere. I mean, watching the rise and fall of Huijong is really fun to watch. Episode 6 is probably my favorite episode in the history of reality television. I mean, there's so much that goes on in this episode. We have the search for the token of immortality. We have Sangmin finding the token of immortality. We have Doohee losing his ID card. We have Sangmin giving Doohee the fake token of immortality. We have Doohy betraying Sangmin, only for him to realize that Sangmin tricked him to begin with. And then we have Doohy going home after Ji-won betrays him in the death match. It really is an incredible episode of television. However, at the same time, episode 9 is probably one of the worst episodes in the entire series, so it kind of counteracts each other. Where Layoff is just a worse version of Food Chain and a harder one to follow. And then having all these Season 1 players back really benefited Sangmin, pretty much guaranteeing him the win during this episode. Now for the big twist of this season with the Token of Immortality, I don't mind it as a twist on the game. I mean, obviously, it's very similar to an idol in Survivor. And kind of similarly, it did put a lot of focus on it instead of the actual main game, kind of similar to what Survivor does now. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I don't mind it as a game mechanic. The main matches were a massive mixed bag for me during this season, as I love games like Food Chain and Seed Exchange and Minus Auction and even Big Deal Game I really enjoyed. But outside of those, I feel like most of the main matches were pretty mediocre. The death matches were a massive improvement over Season 1, but still not as strong as later seasons. I mean, the death match between Jinho and Ji-won is still really fantastic to watch. I mean, it's really crazy how something like that could even happen, where they tied, I believe, was it 3 times? The cast, again, is strong, but I do feel like it's a bit top-heavy. I think Yeowon, Junghyun, and Ji-won are all solid characters. Yu Young is a pretty decent player. Yoon Sun and Huijong are pretty fun early boots. Hung Chul is probably one of my favorite characters in the entire series. Jinho has a solid run here. But really, the season, at the end of the day, is all about Sangmin. I mean, Sangmin has the most dominant run in the history of the show, especially from, I believe it's episode 5 on, where he pretty much just has complete dominance over the entire game. And because he is such a great character, it actually makes his dominance interesting to watch. However, at the same time, I do think his dominance kind of lessens the appeal of a lot of the other players in the game. I think a lot of them didn't have much of a chance to really play the game at a certain point. So because of that, I did decide to rank this lower than the next 2 seasons. Though again, watching Sangmin win is really fun, so I still have it at number 3. Now for number 2. The second best season of The Genius to me is The Genius Black Garnet, also known as Season 3. And I don't know if you could see a trend here, but there is one. But yeah, when I initially watched this season, I actually didn't love it. I mean, I thought, and well, I still think that the Dongmin and Hyunmin alliance is the best part of the entire season. But without a character as dynamic as Sangmin, I did feel a bit let down at first. But I do think rewatches have kind of improved my opinion on this season. I've grown an appreciation for it, as I do feel like it's probably the most consistent season of the bunch. I feel like there are no dud episodes here, even though I don't love certain main matches. I mean, I don't love like the jury game. I didn't love middle race, as I just didn't feel like it translated well to TV. And they do it twice on this season. But I do think a lot of the other ones are pretty good. I mean, Fruit Stand is fantastic. Stormy Stock Market is fun. Chain Auction's really great. Doubting Yutenori was really great. And the death matches here are also fantastic, and probably the best in the entire series. Most of them are modifications on older games, but I felt like those modifications made these games better. Things like Black and White 2, Double-Sided Poker, Betting Rock, Paper, Scissors. And we had new original games, things like 12 Jongi, Memory Maze, and Monorail that were all really fun. I mean, Monorail in particular plays out in the most spectacular way here, where Dongmin makes a game-ending mistake, but then convinces Yeonju to make a mistake herself, which gives him the win. Episode 7 of this season is probably one of my favorite episodes in the entire series, where Dongmin and Hyunmin, who have been dominating the game up until that point, have the rest of the cast turn against them, but they still end up surviving. And this obviously leads to them being the final 2, where Dongmin and Hyunmin are probably the strongest final 2 from any of these seasons. They probably had the closest matchup here, where I mean, seasons 1 and 4 both end with a 2-0 win. And with Sangmin's win in season 2, I feel like he only won in a 2-1, and he got really lucky with things there. I feel like this is definitely the most competitive final we had. Now for the actual twist of the season itself, Black Garnets, I didn't love them. I mean, I feel like they were made way too difficult for the power to actually be utilized. The fact that you needed 3 Black Garnets just to attempt a black mission, and you had to succeed in the black mission to take you out of the deathmatch, I felt like that was a bit too much. Especially when we saw it in action, where both of the black missions that were attempted were failed. The cast as a whole is pretty mixed for me. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, again, the cast of The Genius is always really strong, but I do think this is probably the worst cast of the series for me. Again, Dongmin and Hyunmin are fantastic. Ah Young is a fantastic character. Young-suk and Kyung-hoon are fantastic early boots, but outside of them, I do feel like the cast is kind of meh. I mean, we do have a really savvy cast. I mean, I think this is probably a more intelligent cast than the previous 2 seasons. But I mean, people like Yo-hyun and Jungbom were decent strategically, but I don't feel like they were the greatest TV. Young-sung was same thing, kind of dull at points. Jung-hoon and Soojin were just there. I don't know. I just didn't love this cast as much as the other ones. And that's a major factor at why I have this ranked here at number 2. So for number 1, the best season of The Genius. Again, it should be pretty clear here. I've talked about seasons 1, 2, and 3. So obviously, number 1 is season 4, The Genius Grand Final, the final season of the show, which was an all-star season. And as an all-star season, it does have a fantastic cast. I mean, all 8 people who have made it to the final 3 in the previous seasons returned, which is a very impressive feat that, again, it's very surprising that they were able to get all of them back. The other 5 choices, though, are weird. I think there's some people there that aren't the ones that I would have picked, but I think some of the like more questionable choices actually turned out to be pretty good on this season. People like Kyung-hoon and Jun-suk. Especially Kyung-hoon, who pretty much carried the show for a majority of the season. I mean, him and Dongmin. The premiere itself is one of my favorite episodes in the history of reality television. I mean, it's so fantastic. I mean, to have Sangmin come back, obviously, and be back to his usual tricks, that was fun. We have a fantastic death match where Jun-suk just completely outplays Jung-hoon. And the episode just really feels like a celebration of the series as a whole, where the first like 15 minutes of the episode is dedicated to introducing these all-star players and talking about what they've done and their dynamics and everything. I just found it really, really fun. It's really a part of an episode that I could just watch over and over again and still really enjoy. The main matches in this season were pretty good, though. I feel like there were some notable bad ones for me. I didn't like Loyalists and Rebels, and that probably leads to the worst episode of the entire season. I didn't love How Much, which was the final main match in this season. I didn't love that one either. The death matches were all returning death matches from previous seasons, and I really like this twist that they added, where the contestants themselves would know the pool of possible death matches, and there would be a random draw every week to select which death match would be done. Now, I wasn't a big fan of certain death matches that were in the pool to begin with, things like Quattro and Tactical Yonori. So overall with this season, again, it's just such a perfect culmination of these previous 3 seasons, with most of the big names coming back. I mean, there were a couple notable people missing. I mean, Sungyu, Hung Chul, and Ah Young were people that I would have loved to see on this cast that weren't there, but it is what it is. The season has a string of fantastic moments, from its fantastic premiere, to watching Sangmin go out in a blaze of glory in episode 3, to Jun-suk and Young-sung outplaying everyone in Fish Shop, to Kyung-hoon's underdog run throughout the entire game, and watching Dongmin completely decimate the field and play one of the most dominant games of reality television ever, and pretty easily become the only 2-time winner of the show. I mean, this is such a fantastic season of television and a great conclusion to the series as a whole. So there we go. That is every season of The Genius. So yeah, my rankings just end up being chronological order. I mainly did this to talk about these individual seasons. I mean, I love The Genius. I think it's one of the best shows ever created. I think it's something that you should definitely watch if you haven't. And there are more ideas for Genius videos in the future. I mean, I don't know how into that people will be, but to be honest, I don't really care. So, oh well. So yeah, that is the video. Thank you for watching.